so many people would say to people like you and I, Denver, you should have known. Why didn't you know before? Why did you stand beside him or back him at any point? I kind of want to pose that question to you. How do you reckon with having ever accepted an endorsement from him, with having ever, defended him and defended this same, members of this same caucus that are literally leading us to the brink of a shutdown right now for their criminal dear leader? How do you?
Lordy, it's really not an excuse, and I jumped in as, a center right guy in 2018. I'd really never been in politics and had an individual get out for alcoholism. And I always thought of myself as a Republican, and, that's how I was raised. And so when I ran, I'm like, listen, I don't know how far I want to go on this Trump train. I remember I had a consultant tell me, he goes, well, Denver, um, you're certainly not a Democrat. I mean, you're no liberal. And, you gotta act a little crazy to beat the crazier. And, you had talked earlier, Jessica, about people who believe or don't believe, right? The silence is deafening. I remember in the consulting class, they're like, Denver, don't say anything. Just do what you got to do, because eventually he's going to go away, right? You're a new Republican, right? You believe in marriage equality. You believe in the legalization of marijuana, right? You're sort of this sort of more socially liberal, almost libertarian Republican that's also a fiscal conservative. You also believe in a foreign presence of the United States. You're really strong on foreign policy. All you have to do is get through this. The issue that you have is you sell out a little bit of yourself every day, thinking that you have a more noble priority or goal, especially if you're sort of a facts-based human being. And, and after July, when I officiated that same-sex wedding, Jessica, when I actually sort of got kicked to the curb by the Republican Party, I said, how long can I play the game long enough to get through this cycle where I can be that new Republican? I can be that kind of person. Well, that is fantastical thinking. Because you're already in the current and you have to play on that team. And that, Jessica, what I'm telling you, probably better than anybody, is that when you say, hey, that's a little crazy, that's wrong, immediately you get that pushback so hard, right? Like, oh, you're not part of the team. You're one of those crazy people. They're calling you crazy by identifying their own insanity. And I think that's why I didn't vote for Trump. I'm still surprised at how many people still voted for Trump in 2020. Dirty little secret is, even in 2018, I wasn't really on that train either. And so, I'm like, I can get through this. I don't have to support this guy. I can give lip service. I can accept an endorsement. Then I can be the new Republican. Then I can turn the train. And that was naive. Not only naive, it actually hurt me. It hurt who I was as a human being. And I think you have to take a point, which I did, where I have to become independent now. Because what I'm seeing is that the stuff that I thought was just sort of, a gloss or a glisten on crazy, there's no way they could actually be like that. Nobody actually thinks that way. Well, they do. And even as a former intelligence officer, which a lot of former military and the GOP and ours, as like there's just no way that can be. That has to be aspirational. There's no way. But after a year, after the wedding, and then after another 5 to 6 months at that point, Jessica, I think like you and what you had to go through, you're looking around going, I am surrounded by crazy, and how did I get here? And then, you try to claw back. And I think you have been incredibly successful doing that. I believe I have. I just count my blessings that I wasn't in it from 2016 to 2018, and that my career, whatever you want to call that, is more like, working at a Baskin Robbins in a temporary job. But my 2 years in,
kind of like my time on the campaign.
Yeah. I mean, my 2 years, you're like, yeah, I am. I always thought I was the center right bastion of goodness and sort of purity. I'm a good guy. I love my family. I love people. But what happens is if you spoon with crazy, that stuff can rub off on you. It's who you spoon with. And I stopped spooning with crazy, even though I knew I thought I was the good guy. You can't be the good guy in a room of crazies and then keep your mouth shut and think, oh, I will just outlast them. And that's where I really learned how much more energy crazy has than sanity. And what a lesson for me, even at the advanced old age of 48, then 49 back in the day. An old man can learn new tricks. Now at 53, looking back, I would like to go back and Superman throat punch that guy and say, listen, from the first day you were in there, instead of trying 7 to 8 months to play the game, to think that, hey, I'm a new congressman. I need to learn what team building is. I need to learn the environment. I need to be that guy God dang it, Jessica. If I'd had more time in politics, I think I'd never would have run as an R then. It felt like that's what I had to do in that district. And it was a real a learning time for me, and something I think about a lot. I really ruminate on.
So if you could, I think that's, really brave of you and invaluable perspective in so many ways for our viewers. Denver has to catch a plane, so I'm going to truncate our discussion, although I feel like we could go on about this for hours.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am, we could. Yes,
but
ma'am, we could.
I want to ask you, Denver, with that retrospect, do you think if you could go back, you would have voted to impeach Donald Trump the first time? And
going back, that's what I think Mueller needed me on his data team. I actually read, I was maybe one of the only Republicans that read the Mueller report. And I actually didn't vote for impeachment at that time because I thought all the evidence wasn't there. And I thought some of it was political at the time. But going back, if I could have looked more into the Russian issue, especially what I've seen in data now, in retrospect, I might have been the Mitt Romney on the House side. And especially at the time, people don't realize, and I think you do, is you get caught up, especially if you've read the Mueller report. I'm like, what's going on here? I just got into Congress and now I got this going on. And, the crazy left is doing this, they're orchestrating some political move, right, on a Mueller report that didn't even say that we actually should, what is this? What is going on? And I think there was probably about 10 to 15 of us that would say in conference, well, this really stinks. Is it impeachable? I don't know. But in retrospect, it's really difficult for me to square that vote as you're questioning that. And, I do go back and forth. Sometimes I'm like, well, I think on some ways, especially with the evidence, presented to us at the time and me reading actually what was going on in the Mueller report and sort of looking sideways at some of it, I wouldn't change the vote. But then, when you're at that point, but now 3 to 4 years later, as you get older and wiser, or you're getting back into the data side of things, it was so obvious that something so ridiculous was going on there with Trump in the Russian situation, especially with.
It wasn't about the Mueller report. It was about the shakedown of Ukraine.
That's exactly, you know what?
Mr. Biden, it's the same thing.
That's same thing. And, and that's the issue, right? Is that you get caught up in you get caught up in an echo chamber. You get caught up. And I think that's the thing that I never thought that would happen to me. Jessica, not me. I'm Denver frickin' Riggleman, man. I'm a decorated military veteran. I'm a CEO. I'm the guy, right? I've done all these incredible things. I got a great family. There's no way I could get caught up in this. I'm reading this. I know that this is a bunch of crap. And then in retrospect, you're like, oh, you get, you're like, oh, that hurts. And I think that's the thing that you got to square is we have two parties. What lengths are you going to go to? And I'm going to say this, though, and I think this will make you crazy. I lose sleep over the fact that I didn't do certain things to win based on who replaced me. So I have this bizarre thing going on. If integrity and winning elections are mutually exclusive, which I believe, and I wanted to show integrity, make up for some things, look who replaced me by me trying to show integrity. Is somebody who actually believes in QAnon and believes that life begins at erection, and I think those are the kind of things that I worry about. Somebody who thought that birth control was bad. And I'm thinking, what have I done? Now the losing sleep is both going through that awful time and losing to a guy based on the fact that I thought that integrity matters. Both of those things are very difficult on somebody who wants to serve. And maybe the hardest thing I've tried to square is maybe I should have been a little bit crazier to win that election, to not allow that guy in there. But on the other side, would I have lost my soul doing that?
Yeah. And, you teed me up for this next question, which I hope this isn't, I think these are really hard questions that are so important to have answers to. You're talking about making those compromises to maybe stay in a power for, what in your mind was a calculation of, greater good in the long term. So put yourself in that mindset of maybe having made those compromises, not losing that primary in 2020, becoming the Republican candidate, still supported by Trump, winning your district, being now still a sitting Republican member of Congress. Would you be the same Denver Riggleman that we know today, who's very outspoken, or would you be making those compromised calculations to maybe just try to do what you were justifying to yourself was a greater long-term agenda?
Even when I accepted that second endorsement, which was a tepid one at that time because they already knew that I was down the track on another way, I already told the guys, even though except I'm not voting for them. And, they're like, holy shit, Dan. I'm like, well, I didn't before. So, so I mean, doesn't hurt me too much. But, here I am. I'm like, I have to keep these kind of secrets just to not let these type of individuals win. So I think I want to tell you, Jessica, that I would have been the same Denver Riggleman. I don't know. And that's what scares the hell out of me. Power it's a sexy thing. I got the first reservations at Capitol Grill, Jessica, right? So, I mean, it's a sexy thing. But on the other hand, I think I would have been kicked out eventually. I think I'd have been the first congressman charged in the modern era with a physical altercation against some of the people from the Freedom Caucus. Because even then, even if I won that church convention, which was only 2,500 people, if you remember, and
Mhm.
where they didn't want they tried to disenfranchise as many people because they didn't want me to win because I was a bad Republican. I mean, I was on the climate change caucus.
Yeah.
I officiated a same-sex wedding. I think actually that would have happened at some point because I was already down the line by that time. Even if I would have won that, I was already down the line of F this. And
Mhm.
I am being very honest about that. But once you're
Yeah.
back in, this, Jessica, once I take the oath again, I'm like, well, for fundraising, I need to send out a fundraising message that says Nancy Pelosi is a socialist. I need to make sure I have a picture with me with my pistol because I gotta make sure that I'm messaging to the NRA. Well, I mean, am I still going to do that stuff? But like now, what am I going to do? How do
Basically,
I
you have to be a sellout, is what you're saying, a complete sellout to
a
survive.
complete sellout? You have to because there's only two parties. And I don't think the two-party system survives the social media alternative media age. I think it's impossible. I don't know if we need a third party, but we need another way. I think if we had something, God, I'm not really even a Star Wars fan, but we need a "This is the way" Mandalorian thing going on where somebody actually comes out and says, "Hey, we need another way besides this tribal stuff." Now, people like Denver don't want aboutism, the left and the right. I'm not. Listen, I know the far right's in a hold my beer moment, okay? But the tribalism is awful, and you do have to sell your soul to be part of the tribal system in one way or the other if you're going to be in politics today. And that's why I say that integrity and winning elections are most times mutually exclusive.
Well, I hope that you would have been that Denver Riggleman if it took a fist fight on the floor of the House to show
Oh
your moral
God.
character. We would have been here for it.
Hey, I might be old, Jessica, but I'm also
You're
slow.
not old. Hey, on the lights on, age ain't nothing but a number. You are not old.
That's right.
We are not calling anybody old here on Lights On.
No, this has been amazing. Thank you so. This has been amazing.
It's never too late to grow. I mean, that is a huge
That's
theme
the
of
truth.
this show. I mean, it is never too late. But like I said in that opening intro that I gave, it's a question of how many people suffer in the process of our personal awakening and our collective awakening. And that's why we have so much work to do.